admit, I do not accept, and neither do you guys, that Charlie Kirk lost his life because he really pissed off the trans lobby. It terrifies me to think that on the day that Charlie died, I got multiple phone calls from people who said that me and Tucker should lay low because we're also on the list. And they never told us who specifically told them that, by the way. Now I'm wondering why they never told us who specifically told them that. I called Tucker. I'm like, are you hearing the same thing I'm hearing? If they're saying that we're next. And now I go, was that supposed to be a threat to me and Tucker? To have us watch the public execution of a friend of ours and then to call us and to say, you should lay low for a little bit because you guys, we're hearing that you guys are on a list. Was that just supposed to be a threat?
As is now a bi-weekly occurrence, Candace Owens has again dropped a bombshell. Multiple bombshells, actually. I'm going to start by talking about a very interesting tidbit that I don't think you should be focusing on. I know that sounds weird that I would start with that, but it'll make sense. So Candace Owens had a basically document dump and proved out many of her claims that she made almost a full month ago now that people have been just constantly lambasting her. Where's the receipts? You liar, you liar, you liar. Then she delivers the receipts. And now it's, how could you possibly put out text messages that were supposed to be private about a man who died? And how dare you? It's like, oh, so you just, whatever she says and whatever evidence she has to back up her claims, you're just going to blast her regardless. Essentially what you're saying is, shut up, Candace Owens. We're not interested in the truth of who took out Charlie Kirk. We are just interested in controlling the narrative and making sure that the guy who we currently have in custody is prosecuted and put to death, regardless of the facts. That's actually what you're interested in. Now we're all on the same page here. I get exactly what you're doing. All right, so let's start with the story that is interesting, but probably not something you should be totally focused on. Josh Hammer. Now, Josh Hammer is a very important figure in this story, and I definitely want you to focus on him. But this aspect of the story, I think, could be a misdirect to a certain degree. Both prior and after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Josh Hammer inexplicably tweets out public execution. The first one, he actually does it with a quote tweet of Donald Trump from a dozen years ago, where Trump is talking about how there should be public executions because then it'll send a message and it'll stop this shit. And he just says based. Okay. At the time, I couldn't really remember the context of that day and that news cycle. I went back and I looked. And in fact, I was talking about Arena, the poor girl who had been killed on that train. And I think that's probably what he was referencing. It is interesting to note, though, and I think it's very important that people understand the context of this. In Josh Hammer's own admissions, that night, the very night that he sent that out, he was having a conversation on that Zoom call, and I know it was with a rabbi and Charlie Kirk. He said others, so I think that there may have been one or two more people. I do not know who they were on that call, but they were having a conversation about how Charlie would address any critiques of Israel during his campus tour. Now, that's how they frame it.
As you know, we actually spoke literally the night before his tragic and untimely death. I was on a small Zoom call with him and a couple others. We were literally talking through this topic. I was giving Charlie advice for how to message on this issue on his forthcoming campus tour. You know, he kind of jokingly mentioned to me, he was like, Josh, I'm going to mention your book, Israel and Civilization, and it's so good. And that was literally our last conversation. It's just so tragic. This letter that he wrote to the prime minister, Chris, I read back in June or July or so. And there were so many people in the aftermath of his horrific assassination, Candace Owens, folks like that, who were saying that, oh, Charlie was turning on Israel. He was ready to sell them out and renounce his life's work of sincere and genuine friendship with the Jewish people and the Jewish state. But this letter that he wrote to Bibi Netanyahu, Chris, literally begins. The first sentence of the letter is, I'm paraphrasing here, but it's a close paraphrase. As a Christian, one of my greatest joys in life is making friendships with the Jewish people and defending the state of Israel. That's literally the opening sentence of this letter.
Filth. Okay? Absolute filth. I don't understand it. I can't comprehend it. Whatever that is that lives in him does not live in me. There's no truth in him. Obviously, there's no truth in Josh Hammer. He could have said, well, Charlie was going through 48 hours earlier. Yeah, he refused to do that.
Unfortunately, we will never know the truth of those conversations because I can't trust Josh Hammer, and you should not trust Josh Hammer. And I'm going to prove to you that this man is a just overt liar, despicable liar. That's a fact. I'll show you. So that night he's having this Zoom call with, this is Charlie, the rabbi, Josh Hammer, maybe one or two others. And they're having this conversation about how he's going to deal with these critiques of Israel. However, I'm interested now because of the receipts, because of the text message screenshots that were put out by Candace Owens and confirmed by Andrew Kolvet of TPUSA.
Started this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
So we know these are real. I want to be very clear about that. And that's the story. So we're going to get into that in a second. But I'm very interested to know, given that just the night prior, Charlie Kirk had said, I have no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause. Were they actually just giving Charlie Kirk a coaching lesson on how to be a better defender of Israel? Or was this, again, yet another potential intervention to try and bring him back onto the plantation? I think that's a question that we really need an answer to. And I'm not sure that we'll ever get it, but it would be very telling if that were the case. The reason I say this is because that's the big document dump from Candace, is that, in fact, everything she alleged about how Charlie was, in fact, openly discussing his intention to abandon the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist cause just 48 hours before his life was taken. That is true. That happened. Does that mean that Israel killed him? No, it doesn't. I want to be crystal clear about that. But the fact that that happened factually, and instead of the people that were on that text chain acknowledging that Candace Owens' claims were true, all of them, all 7 of them, stayed totally silent about it. And some of them actively and overtly lied intentionally to misrepresent Charlie's emotions, mindset, outlook, and potential motives for why he might have been killed.
We're supposed to believe that he had that dramatic switch. So he went from, I'm done, to like, hey, love ya, how can I be of more service to you? And then in that exact same day, he was texting people saying they are going to kill me. On the same day that he's on this Zoom call, this is a fact, that at the same time, that same day, he's texting people saying they are going to kill me. And we are supposed to deduce from this that by they, what he really meant was Tyler Robinson. He meant they, them, duh, like a non-binary person or a trans person. They were going to kill him. That was what he had a feeling about. And everything else is just completely irrelevant.
Deeply disturbing, and something that needs, if there is an actual investigation happening, which I'm not even sure there is at this point, but if there is, and if you're not interviewing these people, that's a big problem. So as I said, the story that's kind of irrelevant, in my opinion, is that then after the attack happens, again, Josh Hammer posts public execution. No details, nothing else. And I'm thinking, okay, so you've just seen your buddy. I mean, this is allegedly your buddy. I don't think he was. But you've just seen your buddy brutally, publicly executed, and you're just randomly tweeting that out? Now, obviously, the defenders of him are coming out and saying, well, he was talking about the guy who took out Charlie. Obviously. It's like, okay, maybe. There was no context whatsoever. So just prior to the attack, he's saying this, and right after the attack, he's saying this, and he's giving no context whatsoever. And if you're familiar with, the conspiracy theory world, you're already familiar with the term revelation of the method, where essentially like they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. And they leave these little breadcrumbs that aren't provable, and it just causes people to spiral out. But it's some sort of obligatory thing, and I don't know if it's like Illuminati or whatever, but I'm not going to go down that path because it is not provable. So if you want to look at those messages and come to the conclusion that, yes, he was in on it and he was doing this and he was notifying the world and he was sending a message, maybe. I don't know. But I'm not going there. What I want to focus on is that after one of his close confidants, there's 7 people on that text chain. One of those guys was Josh Hammer, confirmed by Candace Owens. He then went on a media circuit where he's just talking about how it's totally false. Charlie has never been more in for Israel. He's just loves Israel. That's it. There's no nuance. Candace Owens is a liar. She doesn't have any proof of this, and he just overtly lied.
And it was really only over the past, I don't know, a year and a half or so that I would say that we became closer. And we started talking very frequently. He formed a small group chat. There were probably 7 or 8 of us total in this group chat there. He called it his brain trust for thinking about Israel, for thinking about Jewish-Christian relations. He was very concerned about rising anti-Semitism. So we talked a little bit about that sort of stuff, frankly. But above all, we really strategized about how to turn back the tide against rising anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment on the American right in Republican Party circles among young Gen Z conservative activists. Because of that, he did organize this Zoom call the night before he tragically was murdered. So basically, before he set foot at the first event, he wanted kind of an hour-long kind of prep call. So it was me, a right-wing rabbi friend of mine who lives in Jerusalem, Pesach Wilicki, a couple of his producers, and there was one Christian pastor, and that was basically it. And Charlie had a list of questions. You know, how do I respond when the students ask me about starvation, famine, genocide, borders, two-state solution, this, that, there. But the mere fact that he was seeking our counsel, and we communicated on a virtually daily basis through this active group chat and one-on-one, the fact that we were doing that, along the fact that he had that particular Zoom call with people like me the night before he was killed, I think really profoundly calls into question this narrative that he was getting ready to renounce his well-established lifelong support for the Jewish people, for the state of Israel.
I need you to think to yourself why that is. Now, the obvious and seemingly or somewhat benign answer is that, well, he's just a propagandist. He's just a paid propagandist for Israel. And maybe it's that simple. But I'll tell you what I feel about it. I feel like that's really, really suspicious. How could you not be suspicious of that? You have a guy who built his empire, the TPUSA empire, over a dozen years or whatever it was, much of which was being done with Zionist donor money, be that Jewish Zionists or the Christian evangelicals that have a similar worldview when it comes to Israel. And Charlie Kirk in these messages is saying, just lost another major donor, $2 million out the door, and I'm not going to be bullied, and I have no choice but to abandon the pro-Israel cause.
So Charlie writes in this group chat, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Somebody writes, oh. Charlie writes, Jewish donors play into all of the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. So again, this is 48 hours before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was very clear and he was very explicit, and he did not back down, not in that Hamptons meeting, which they're all lying about, nor in this text thread. I'm not going to reveal the names of the other 7. Actually, you know what? I disagree with myself 4 seconds ago. Let's just throw in Josh Hammer for funsies. He's on this chat, okay?
Instead of just telling the truth about that, which is the obviously right thing to do, if you're actually interested in justice for your friend, well then say, yeah, Candace is right. He was having a hard time. Donors were pressuring him because of his platforming of Tucker Carlson, Dave Smith, et cetera, and his relationship with Candace, and they wanted him to part ways, and he refused, and they started to rip funding from him. And yeah, he did. He talked about, they could have spun it. They could have said, well, he was just, venting, and he was thinking, maybe I got to go a different direction because I got to keep the doors open, but he still loved Israel. Like, they could have spun it that way. They didn't. He just lied. He just lied overtly, over and over and over again. During an active murder investigation, he lied about a glaring potential motive for him to be taken out. If you find that acceptable on any level, there's something deeply wrong with you. And I'm referring to James Lindsay and all these other pro-Israel pundits that have absolutely lost their mind and any sense of or semblance of justice in their concern with this story, because that is a huge misdirect, that in the early hours of an investigation, everything matters. All of the pertinent information about potential motives matters so much. And we're talking in just the few days after, and all of these people stayed quiet or they lied. But not one of them did not stay totally quiet, though. And this is an important thing for you guys to know. Andrew Kolvet came out. He was basically, the PR rep for TPUSA and Charlie's kind of right-hand man. He acknowledged on his show yesterday that these texts were real. That's how we know factually that they are.
That was a text grab, a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there.
And basically what he says in it is that he had screenshotted those messages and sent them to a government official.
I wanted to not betray my friend's trust in that way. But I did share it with some people in government because it happened really quick. It was, it took 33 hours for authorities to get their suspect. And in those first moments, we wanted no stone unturned. We wanted to leave nothing unturned. So I shared it with a few people. Don't know where it went from there, apparently. But here we are. So
I don't know if that was FBI or what, but clearly he thought that they were pertinent. And I want you to really take a minute with that fact that Andrew Kolvet, Charlie's second in command, more or less, had these messages and he thought that they were meaningful enough that he screenshotted them and he sent them to law enforcement. So everybody coming out in the aftermath of Candace Owens dropping these receipts and saying, this proves nothing, this is irrelevant, this doesn't tell you anything. One of his best and closest confidants screenshotted them and sent them to law enforcement right after Charlie was killed. Why would he do that if he thought it was irrelevant? He didn't. He thought it was relevant. He thought it was a potential lead. That's not Candace Owens. That's not Dave Smith or Ian Carroll or Clint Russell. This is not anyone who's anti-Israel by any stretch of the imagination, at least not that we know of publicly, who thinks that the fact that he was having funds pulled from TPUSA by a pro-Israel donor and that he had decided that he had no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause was an interesting tidbit that law enforcement needed to know about when it came to his murder, his public assassination. He thought that, not me. So does that fact matter? You bet your fucking ass it does. I don't know if there's anything that matters more. It may be the lead, potentially, that opens this case up. And Candace Owens had these screenshots in the week after, I don't know how many days after Charlie Kirk was killed, and she was talking about it openly. And guess what she did? And this is so fucking brilliant, I'm left almost speechless about it. In hindsight, it is now obvious that Candace Owens had these screenshots of these messages when she first started talking about it. And she did not put those out because she wanted the 7 people on that chain to go out and defend it and see how they acted. Now, Candace has been dragged through the mud mercilessly for kind of stringing this along and not putting it out rapidly. And I understand. I was actually very frustrated she wasn't putting out proof sooner. But in hindsight, you got to really respect what she was doing because Candace Owens wants justice for Charlie Kirk. I believe that strongly. But she is not an investigator. She does not have subpoena power. She is not law enforcement, right? So what does she have? She has a bully pulpit. She has an enormous platform by which she can apply pressure. So what does she do? She puts out unverified claims about this text message chain and unverified claims as to Charlie's mentality when it came to a multitude of issues, largely regarding Israel. And she makes it clear that there are other people that know this factually, and she just continues to apply pressure, saying, I want them to publicly disavow me. Do it. And these pathological, lying sociopaths do, because they have no self-control. They come out just week after week, blasting her for almost an entire month, just trying to destroy her reputation, career, everything else. And then once everyone has basically given up on her actually dropping these receipts, she goes, boom, here you go. Here they are. Now you get to see how full of shit some of these people that were in Charlie's inner circle are. Now, we don't know who all 7 of these people on the chain were. My understanding is that basically 3 or 4 of them we don't know at this point, and she's promising that she's going to release them day to day. I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure it's really particularly relevant. But what we do know is that Andrew Kolvet was on it because he acknowledged it. Josh Hammer was on it because he lied about it. And Candace said, yeah, he was on that chain. And then I think she also said that the pastor who came out and criticized Candace and said, I wish you would be the friend to him that Charlie was to you and not do this. So yeah, basically we've got one person behaving semi-honorably because he at least turned it over to law enforcement, though he did not come out and defend Candace Owens, which I think is cowardly. And then we've got two overt liars. So you now know that his second in command, Andrew Kolvet, he believed that these messages were important enough that they could be a potential motive or at least of interest to the investigation. We know that for a fact. And we also know that Josh Hammer and that pastor believed that this was damning enough that they needed to go out and lie about it.
As he was preparing for his campus tour, he decided that he wanted to have a meeting. Josh Hammer was on the call, you know Josh, and I was on the call, and a couple of Charlie's staff to talk through Israel issues. He was really grappling with these issues. I know that he's also having meaningful conversations with people who are anti-Israel, and that's fine, and he's going to do that, and that's all part of who Charlie is. He's going to expose himself to everything.
I remember right after October 7th, I was a little concerned about some of the things he was saying afterwards, and I wasn't so emotional. I realized Charlie was looking at a lot of the Israel-America stuff through the America First lens. I was looking at it through my family's in Israel. My son's joining the IDF. I was looking at it through that lens, and I was very
just
emotional.
Your Jewish national identity.
Right. The fact that he was meeting with you to refine his talking points, I assumed there was a lot of pushback.
When that reporter asked me what the mood of the meeting was, and I said it was combative. He was really grappling with these issues. He was getting pulled in different directions, and I understand that. There's also within him a very faithful Bible-believing evangelical Christian. If that wasn't there anchoring him with a positive orientation towards Israel, he undoubtedly would have been much further along into the anti-Israel camp, with whom he shared a lot of opinions. And that's where he annoyed people in the Jewish community with some of the criticisms he had for Israel.
So that's 3 people of the 7 that are essentially telling you everything you need to know. Those messages, his mindset, his shift when it came to Israel was meaningful. It mattered. It was not a lie. It was true. They lied for a reason, and you need to find out why. We need to find out why. If we had an active federal law enforcement agency headed up by someone who didn't look like he was high out of his mind on cocaine, there might be a chance that we get those answers. But since Kash Patel isn't interested in actually getting to justice on this or anything, apparently, I guess it's left to us. And are we going to be perfect? No, we're not, because we're not professionals at this stuff. But we're at least interested in the truth, and we're driving towards it. So to that I will say, Candace, I tip my hat. That was very impressive. You don't have subpoena power, but what you basically just did was interrogated 7 of his closest confidants, and they came up wanting. And some of them came up overtly lying. And that matters a lot. Because when someone is publicly assassinated, a political figure and a man who is actually at the head of a large, maybe the largest young political empire when it came to influence, you should not and cannot ignore any potential motives when it came to who may have been responsible. And I regret to say this because I did not want to put any sort of shade or doubt or concerns about anyone in Charlie's inner circle unless I had proof of it. Because if I do that wrongly, then that means that I'm basically putting public pressure on people who are like genuinely innocent and in mourning. That's an evil thing to do. It's like what happened with Alex Jones in San Diego. I don't want to go down that path. Especially like I've seen so many conspiracy theories when it comes to Charlie's wife. I haven't talked about it at all. I want you guys to note that, because if she's not involved, then you're attacking a widow. That is so deeply fucked up. Now, I'm not saying that I don't know, but if I don't have fucking ironclad proof, I am not going to blast anyone that was close to Charlie, because that's super wrong to do. But guess what, Josh Hammer? Now I know that you are a liar. And I already knew you were a liar because of Dave Smith telling that story about how you basically came in and glad-handed and just talked shit with him and were just having just a ton of fun right before you went on that TPUSA stage in Florida and debated Dave a couple months ago and said it was all going to be above the belt. And then as soon as you walked on stage, you said, I'm disgusted to share the stage with this guy. He shouldn't even be up here. You're a fucking scumbag. And I already knew that. And I said it on an episode like a couple weeks ago. I knew you were a bad guy. I didn't know you were this bad. But now I do. Now I know that you are a pathological liar. You're not just a propagandist. You're not just a probably paid propagandist. You are a dangerous misinformation agent. That's what you are. You were in Charlie's inner circle with 7 of his closest confidants, and he was telling you how he felt about X, Y, and Z. He was doing these Zoom calls, and you were coaching him up, maybe, or maybe you were pressuring him. Who knows? But regardless, in the aftermath of his murder, when we're trying to figure out who killed him, allegedly your friend, one of your close buddies, right? And you lied to the public. And as far as I'm concerned, if you lie about a friend who just got murdered, and it's proven that you lied, you immediately become a suspect. I just think that's the rational way to look at it. Now, I'm not saying you pulled the trigger. I'm just saying I think that you may have had knowledge of this. And how could I not feel that way after I know that you were in the inner circle being told these things and then immediately pivoting and lying about them overtly and aggressively for weeks? I have to now suspect you as having knowledge. And I honestly think that's the only fair way to view it. And I'm not the only one feeling this way, because this is the first real potential motive that had been intentionally covered up that we now know factually is true. So much so that even 2 guys are now reassessing, reopening the case, if you will. Nick Fuentes and Dave Smith.
I think that's where maybe it makes sense they killed Charlie Kirk, because there's some recognition they are that desperate. That is a desperate hour for them when they're losing absolutely everybody, isolated. They're not winning the debates. They can't win it with the soft power, censorship, suppression, the rest of it. Do they then resort to total chaos, crisis, these kinds of operations? Because it's sort of like the emperor has no clothes. It's, like you said, in our lifetimes, we've never seen something like this. Can they lose? Will they tolerate losing? What does that actually look like? And I think that's going to be resolved in the next 6 months. So it's going to be kind of freaky.
So as I said in the week after the attack, I didn't have any proof. So I wasn't going to make any claims or even really assertions as to who was responsible or if any foreign intel or domestic intel was involved. But I said, if you think that there wasn't capacity, you're crazy. If you think that if these text messages from Candace Owens are in fact verified, that there wouldn't be motive, you're crazy. Well, we now know that those messages are verified. So if you still think that it's impossible that a foreign intel agency or domestic would actually do this to Charlie Kirk, I'm going to call you crazy, because it's possible. And I need to take a minute to criticize a whole hell of a lot of people, because in the aftermath of a tragedy like this, I respect anybody who wants to just mourn and stay quiet. What I really don't respect is coming out and talking loudly and basically running a smokescreen for the murder of someone who is supposed to be your friend. And right now I'm talking to Jack Posobiec. I'm talking to all of the MAGA Inc. people who have just said over and over again in this cult-like mantra, I saw a leftist murder Charlie Kirk and I saw them celebrate it. He just keeps saying this over and over again. Once a week, he's posting this. You didn't see a leftist murder Charlie Kirk. That may be what happened, but you didn't fucking see it. And you are lying when you say you have. You did not see it. If you have footage that actually shows it, well, then do the right thing and put it out, because you haven't. And I don't think you have. And you've never said you did. So you're just, I don't know what you're doing. Are you trying to convince yourself? Your fucking low IQ following? I don't know who. Who are you trying to convince with this, Jack? Deeply, deeply concerning. And these guys did countless events with one another. I think they were on the same show a ton of the time. So I don't understand this, and I don't understand Benny Johnson, any of these guys that are just basically throw the book at Tyler Robinson, case closed, it's over. I am honestly suspicious of everybody at this point. I'm just being honest. I don't get it. Maybe I'm just built different. Maybe I'm the only person that actually functions in a way that I expect friends to function. That if I see my good friend brutally murdered in a public fashion, I'm going to burn everything to the ground until I find out who did it. Why would I not? I mean, if you don't feel that way, are you their friend? So this is my honest opinion. And then simultaneously, we have, Bibi Netanyahu coming out and denying it over and over and over again. So many weird things. But the report that just broke a week ago was that the influencers are getting, big paydays for posts in defense of Israel. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, is that all this is? Like, was Charlie's inner circle just filled with bought and paid for shills? That's a distinct possibility. And honestly, that's like the most benign explanation. The alternative explanation is like, they're not just bought and paid for shills, they're actual operatives. Like, we have to consider that. If you think that there hasn't been intelligence agency infiltration into the independent media space, you're just not thinking. Of course there has been. Of course there is. There's no doubt in my mind. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why you guys won't say a fucking word about all of the inconsistencies in the FBI narrative. Maybe that's why. I don't know. I would love for you to just do the honorable thing, if this guy was your friend, to actually, I don't know, back up Candace Owens, assist her in this investigation to make sure that you have the right guy. So it's three things, basically. Bought and paid for shills, actual assets themselves, or cowards. There is no good answer. If you look at this case and you're just saying, they got the right guy, 100%, open and shut, I have no doubts about it, I don't know what the fuck you're looking at. I don't know what you're looking at. So my only assumption at that point is you're one of those two things, or the third one, which is you're just a pussy. You're just scared to death because you saw him get murdered in a brutal fashion, and that's very human to be a bitch about it. But I want to ask you this. Do you intend to live the rest of your life on your knees? Are you just going to cower forever? Are you just going to let your friend die and have no justice, just totally in vain? You're going to bite your tongue forever? Are you just going to turn a blind eye to obvious lies that are coming from the federal agencies when it comes to this investigation? Is that what you're going to do forever? Because if that's who you are, well then, who cares about living or dying? You've already knelt, whatever. And you're the resistance? You're MAGA? You're Make America Great Again on your knees already? How do you expect to get this country off the mat if you can't even fucking stand up yourselves? And I think the answer is you won't. You have no intention of doing so. You're fucking cowards. You have no business having an audience or at least talking tough as if, oh, we're fighting the deep state. You guys aren't doing shit. You're cashing checks. You're cowards. And you're letting your friend die and get no justice because you're, whatever the reason is, disreputable. And in a just world, it would be career destroying. Like, your audience should abandon you. That's just the truth. Reminds me of Dan Bongino talking all that shit, talking so tough. Oh, the FBI, don't you dare let the FBI let this Epstein narrative go. And they know the truth. They know the truth. And then he gets to be deputy director of the FBI and he goes, there's no there. Such frauds. And let me just say, I'm not making this, it's not even an allegation. I'm just saying the potentiality of some of these people being assets, I'm not just putting it on the table for no reason. Posobiec, who does not know who killed Charlie Kirk, despite his assertions to the contrary, is up on Capitol Hill today. And what's he talking about? He's saying, we got to use this moment to basically destroy the left.
And Mr. President, I think the situation is getting worse. When you look at people like Luigi Maggioni in his 20s, Thomas Matthew Crooks, of course, who took a shot at you, sir, the ICE shooter in Dallas, and now this Tyler Robinson, we're starting to see a pattern of more and more murderous violence. And this same violence is not just random. It is targeted assassinations, which are getting worse. And every single one of us in this room that goes out there, and obviously you as well, sir, and all the staff, we are now under that threat every single day. But Mr. President, we need to do something about this because I fear that the next one who could be killed could be sitting at this table right now.
It's like, we don't know anything about Antifa's involvement in the attack on Charlie Kirk. Sure, maybe it's possible. Show me the fucking proof. Or at least show me Tyler Robinson associating with them and then also holding the gun and then also firing the shot. And anything? We don't even have the bullet matched up to the gun yet. It's ridiculous. But that doesn't stop him. He's up on Capitol Hill going, any of us could be next and blah, blah, blah. So I just want to end with this. If you think that the incredible injustices and violations of our rights that happened after 9/11 is the only time that the federal government has taken advantage of a crisis to basically increase their power and to diminish your rights, you're wrong. And I know most of you are not stupid, and you know this. This is what they do over and over and over again. Every single crisis is used to diminish your rights and increase state power. If you think that's not what's happening after the Charlie Kirk assassination, you're just not thinking. So I want you to think very deeply, because I am not a fan of Antifa, obviously. I'm also not a fan of radical Islam, obviously. But that doesn't mean that I loved radical Islam because I opposed the Patriot Act, right? We can all agree on that, I hope, at this point. The spying apparatus that basically diminished our privacy rights, right? We can all agree on that, right? All right, well, I want you to really think deeply before you greenlight the existing federal government, which appears to not be acting with any semblance of autonomy or respect for the American people, and just saying, yeah, go after Antifa, label them a terrorist organization, do whatever you want. Oh, and by the way, while we're at it, we're also going to be just hitting ships, Hellfire missiles coming from Venezuela. Are we going to provide any evidence that these people are actually drug traffickers? No. Does it even matter? Not really, because it's like, if you're a drug trafficker, should you be extrajudicially murdered? I would argue probably not. And if you think that they should be, I just want you to recognize that if you're going to greenlight that, don't be surprised when they start doing that to Americans. Don't be surprised. And if you're going to allow them to label Antifa a domestic terrorist organization and just let them violate their rights and do whatever they want to them, well, doors open. The barn door, it do be open. We have a justice system already. We already have laws that say if you commit violent acts or do all sorts of things that I'm sure Antifa is guilty of, being violent during protests and everything else, prosecute them. How about that? It's like these hate speech and hate crime, add-ons to crimes when it's like a murder. It's like you're going to prison forever anyways. Why are we creating additional layers of legality and identitarian clarifications when it comes to the legal system? No, not American. You don't need to be labeling American citizens as terrorists, because the terrorism label, despite how you feel about Antifa, and as I said, don't like them, but the number one reason that the federal government calls anyone a terrorist, and that includes foreign and domestic, is because they intend to violate their rights egregiously. And once that door has been opened, you will not close it. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please do hit the like button, subscribe, share it around. I'm so glad I did an episode without crying. It has been obviously very challenging, and I have cried every day. It's only been 2 days, but multiple times per day. And I miss him terribly, but everything I said in that episode really got my point across. And it was one of the most beautiful, tragic events of my life. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the responses I got from it. I can't tell you how many calls, texts, DMs, everything, emails even. I'm just being flooded. And I'm glad that it helped so many people, because that was the overwhelming sentiment I was getting from people, was other than, prayers and sympathy for what I was going through, that it really did help a lot of people with their loss, either future or past. It was super profound and beautiful. And I really appreciated it. So it helped me a lot, and I'm glad I can help you. And it makes me feel better about putting that out where I'm just a blubbering ladyboy. And I want to give a special thanks to Scott Horton, Brett Weinstein, Dave Smith, who are, my high profile friends, if you will, that all did the same. They, sent me text message, and it was great. That's when I feel like that's when this is real. These are real friends. These are not just people on the internet. So a lot of you guys, even though we've never met, you uplifted me in my time of need, and I hope that my exposing myself in that way assisted you as well. And it sounds like it did. So that's beautiful. And I just want to give another special shout out to Dave Smith, who, as I said, had Nick Fuentes on today. I just want to encourage you guys to watch it. It's over 3 hours long. I watched the entire thing, found it really fascinating. Personally, I didn't find any of it controversial or worthy of deplatforming or any of the nonsense that I'm sure people will be demanding. But I think it's like, that's the real fight. And actually, Dave mentioned me at the end of the show because I talked to him at length. I'm sure most of you watched that episode where it was like I was really encouraging him. You know, I really wanted him. I wanted Scott. I would love myself to like, let's do this. This Fuentes Groyper shit ain't going away, ladies and gentlemen. It is clearly going to be a major player when it comes to what the America First movement ends up ultimately being. And this is the divide. It's the Dave Smith, you know, Misesian, Rothbardian, Libertarian camp, the Ron Paulians, versus the Buchananites or whatever politician Fuentes would like to be represented by. And I just think that it's a really interesting opportunity to challenge ourselves, their audience, our audiences. And if we believe we're right, I ain't running. I know Nick ain't, and I know Dave ain't. So this is what needs to happen. I don't even perceive these people as, you know, my enemies or my competition or anything like that. Like, I want to improve this country. I want to improve the world. And I think the way we do that is non-intervention. And it's just like, all right, well, is it non-intervention with an identitarian bent, or is it just non-intervention with a libertarian bent? Let's hash it out. So again, I'll put out the offer. I already emailed him, didn't hear back. I'm small time compared to Nick at this point. So if he ignores me continuously, that's fine. I'm not going to get butthurt about it like Nick does with other bigger shows, but whatever. He is welcome to come on. And I would obviously be respectful. I think he's a very interesting guy. And I hope we can do that. But regardless, I hope you guys will watch the episode with Dave and Nick. Very interesting. All right. Drop a comment down below. Help Diago. Subscribe and share it around. See you. Peace.
Subscribe to Liberty Lockdown. Great podcast. Clint is tight.